The second Patricia Hargrove saw my work van turn into my own driveway, she was already on the phone with 911. Voice dripping with fake concern like she was reporting a serial killer. What she didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that I'd been quietly waiting for this exact moment. And the county document folded in my glove box was about to turn her clipboard dictatorship into the punchline of the entire neighborhood. Willow Creek Estates looked like the American dream on the surface, perfectly trimmed hedges, identical beige houses with matching shutters, and an HOA that treated every blade of grass like it was under martial law. I'd bought the old Victorian at the end of Maple Lane 2 years ago, the last piece of the original farm that got swallowed up when developers turned the fields into subdivisions. It was quiet, private, and perfect for my freelance web design work and the vintage furniture restoration I did on the side. Occasional deliveries of lumber, tools, and supplies kept my garage workshop humming. Nothing wild. Just a guy trying to make a living without bothering anyone. Patricia Hargrove, our beloved HOA president, had other ideas. She was the textbook Karen upgraded with pearls and a realtor smile, mid-50s. Blonde helmet hair that never moved in the wind, and a voice that could make good morning sound like a threat. From day one she patrolled the streets like a hall monitor with a real estate license, clipboard permanently glued to her chest. "We're all in this together," she loved to say at meetings. Which really meant do exactly what I say or else. The first warning letter arrived 2 months after I moved in. Excessive commercial vehicle presence negatively impacting community aesthetics and safety. My work van, a clean white Ford Transit I used for client meetings and material pickups, was apparently a crime against curb appeal. I read it, chuckled, and tossed it in the ignore pile. My deed was older than their bylaws. I figured common sense would eventually win. It didn't. Instead, the rumors started. At first they were whispers I caught secondhand from the mailman. "He's turning that beautiful old house into a warehouse. Those trucks are in and out all day, probably selling something shady online." Patricia made sure the stories spread with just enough plausible deniability. She'd sigh dramatically at neighborhood barbecues, "I'm just so concerned about property values and the children." Of course. By month 4, neighbors who used to wave now suddenly found their lawns fascinating whenever I drove by. The single mom across the street stopped letting her kids play near my fence. Someone even left an anonymous note in my mailbox suggesting I consider a more appropriate hobby. I stayed silent. Not because I was weak, I was watching. Documenting every letter, every whispered comment, every time one of her bored minions casually walked past my house snapping photos on their phones. I kept a folder thicker than Patricia's ego. Calm isn't weakness. It's a loaded spring. The escalation was almost comical in how petty it got. One morning I woke up to find a brand new "No Commercial Vehicles" sign planted right at the entrance to my driveway. Not on common ground, literally on the edge of my property line. Another time, Patricia and 2 of her cronies showed up with a tape measure, loudly discussing how my van disrupted the sight line from the community entrance. I stepped out on the porch with coffee in hand and just watched them. "Morning, ladies. Measuring for new curtains?" Patricia's smile went tight. "We're simply ensuring compliance, Mr. Rivera. For everyone's benefit." The way she said compliance made it sound like a dirty word. Then came the cameras. Small black domes appeared on the HOA-owned lamppost directly across from my house, angled straight down my driveway. They weren't subtle. One night I caught one of the board members adjusting it with a ladder at 11 p.m. When I asked what they were doing, he mumbled something about security upgrades and scurried away like a roach when the light flips on. The social freeze-out was the worst part. The annual block party happened without my invitation. People who used to chat about the weather now crossed the street to avoid me. Patricia made sure everyone knew I was difficult and uncooperative. I became the neighborhood villain without ever raising my voice. It was impressive. Really, how one woman could weaponize politeness into social exile. But here's what Patricia never understood: I wasn't ignoring her. I was studying her. Every ridiculous letter. Every passive-aggressive comment at the mailbox. Every time she'd drive by slowly in her white SUV, staring at my garage like it personally offended her. She thrived on control. The second someone pushed back, the mask cracked. And I was patient. Very, very patient. The breaking point came on a bright Tuesday afternoon. I'd just returned from picking up a large load of reclaimed oak for a restoration project. Beautiful stuff. The kind that turns into heirloom pieces. The delivery truck followed me home because the pieces were too big for my van. I directed the driver straight into my driveway. Exactly as I'd done dozens of times before. Nothing blocked. Nothing illegal. Just a guy unloading wood on his own property. Patricia appeared like she'd been waiting in the bushes. She planted herself at the end of my driveway. Arms crossed. Phone already to her ear. Yes. Officer. He's doing it again. Commercial activity on residential property. He's refusing to comply with repeated warnings. I fear for the safety of the neighborhood. I killed the engine and stepped out, wiping my hands on a rag. The truck driver looked uncomfortable. Neighbors started peeking from windows like this was premium entertainment. By the time the sheriff's deputy arrived 10 minutes later, Patricia had her full performance ready. Clipboard out. Voice sweet as artificial sweetener. Thank you so much for coming, officer. We've tried reasoning with him. Multiple notices. He just ignores the rules we all agreed to when we moved here. The deputy, a tired-looking guy named Ramirez, nodded politely and turned to me. Sir. What's going on here? I kept my tone even. I'm unloading materials for a project on my own property. Officer. This is my driveway. My house. My wood. Patricia jumped in immediately. It's not just wood, officer. This is a pattern. He's operating a commercial enterprise out of a residential home. It violates our covenants. It affects everyone's property values. We have standards in Willow Creek. Ramirez glanced at the truck. Then at my Victorian. Then back at Patricia. Ma'am. Does the HOA own this driveway? She blinked. Well, no. But the covenants apply to all visible areas. We have architectural review authority. I reached into my van and pulled out the folded document I'd been carrying for weeks. Before we go further, you might want to see this. I handed it to Ramirez. It was a certified copy from the county recorder's office, dry. Boring legalese that said everything that mattered. My lot had never been properly subjected to the HOA covenants when the subdivision expanded. The original farm parcel was carved out during platting. And the paperwork was never corrected. Legally, the HOA had zero authority over my property. No rules. No fines. No jurisdiction. Ramirez scanned it. Eyebrows rising. Man, this says your association doesn't actually govern this address. Patricia's smile froze like cheap plastic in the sun. That can't be right. Our legal counsel reviewed everything. We have bylaws. We voted on the architectural guidelines last year. Everyone knows the rules. Everyone except the county. Apparently, I said quietly. Ramirez stepped away and made a quick radio call. The neighborhood had gone dead silent. Even the birds seemed to be waiting. Patricia stood there clutching her clipboard like a life raft. her perfectly applied lipstick suddenly looking too bright against skin that was rapidly losing color. When Ramirez came back, his tone had shifted from polite to professional. County confirms it. This property is not under HOA covenants. Never was. You have no authority to enforce rules here. And calling law enforcement to do it for you is problematic. Patricia's mouth opened. Closed. Then opened again. But the deliveries van the aesthetic. Aesthetic isn't a crime. Ma'am. Her face went through the most beautiful sequence of emotions I've ever seen, disbelief. Then rage. Then the dawning horror of someone realizing the throne she'd been sitting on was made of cardboard the whole time. The clipboard actually trembled in her hands. You can't just, this affects property values. We have a responsibility to the community. Ramirez handed her back the useless notices she'd been waving around. You might want to talk to your board about that. And stop issuing enforcement actions on properties you don't control. Could be seen as harassment. The neighbors who had gathered to watch were now openly staring. Phones were out. Someone in the back actually laughed, a short, involuntary bark that broke the tension like a gunshot. Patricia looked around desperately for support. None came. The same people who'd crossed the street to avoid me for months were now looking at her like she'd just peed in the community pool. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. I just nodded at the deputy. Thanks for coming out. I'll get this wood unloaded so the truck can leave. That was it. No screaming match. No viral video moment. Just quiet. Legal. Devastating truth. The fallout was swift and delicious. By the end of the week, the county had opened a review of the entire HOA after my formal complaint, and several other homeowners who suddenly found their courage. Turns out Patricia and her board had been overreaching on more than just my driveway. Improperly recorded liens. Selective enforcement. Even some creative accounting with the dues. The state attorney general's office got interested. Insurance companies started asking questions. Board members began resigning faster than rats off a sinking ship. Each one citing personal reasons while quietly moving their for sale signs up. Patricia tried to hang on at first. She showed up at the emergency meeting in her best pastel suit. Pearls gleaming. Ready to spin the narrative. This is a misunderstanding. We were only trying to protect our community standards. The room was silent except for the sound of chairs scraping as people physically distanced themselves from her. She was voted out 2 weeks later in a special election. The new board immediately dropped all actions against me and started rewriting the bylaws with actual lawyers this time. The neighborhood changed in subtle but real ways. People started waving again. The single mom across the street let her kids ride bikes past my house without clutching them like I was a predator. Someone even dropped off a plate of cookies with a handwritten note, "Sorry we believe the nonsense." I didn't rub it in. I just kept restoring furniture, answering client emails, and parking my van exactly where it belonged, on my own damn driveway. Sometimes late at night I'd sit on my porch with a beer and watch the quiet street. The same street that had felt like a pressure cooker for months. And I'd smile thinking about Patricia. Wherever she was now. Probably measuring someone else's lawn with that same righteous fury. The lesson here isn't complicated. Power that comes from fear and paperwork instead of actual authority is always one county record away from collapsing. And the people who scream loudest about community standards are often the ones who understand community the least. So tell me honestly, was I wrong for staying quiet? Documenting everything? And letting the truth do the heavy lifting? Or was the real villain the woman who thought a clipboard and a fake smile gave her the right to police her neighbors' lives? Drop your own HOA horror stories below. I read every single one. And if you're dealing with your own Patricia right now, keep the receipts. Justice loves paperwork.